BOYLE Sports.
Our sponsors, BOYLE Sports, are always trying to make your job as a punter easier. And if you're a new customer in Ireland with BOYLE Sports, you can get up to €70 worth of free bets. If you bet €10, you are entitled to €70 worth of free bets. Terms and conditions apply. Look in the description down below to avail of a brilliant sign-up offer. Yes, delighted to be joined by Dan Overall, Mark Boylan and Donn McClean to look forward to plenty of the Christmas action. So much to get into, so we won't hang about. We'll go to Kempton on St. Stephen's Day. And the King George, Mark Boylan, looks like one of the best renewals we have seen in recent times on paper. What do you make of the race? And if you were to have a bet, where would you be going?
Yeah, belter of a renewal, Andrew, and I think the influx of the Irish horses, if we are to be biased here, myself and Dom with our Irish hats on, I think it adds savage spice to the race, and it looks like we're going to get the two Willie Mullins runners at this point as well, so huge to have that. Came away from Ascot feeling, Andrew, that Django Bay was going to be my way to look, but I actually think at the value, I really like the Jukebox Man. He was a horse I felt that was forgotten about at the end of last season because of his absence, but he came back with a bang in relatively calm waters, I thought. But it's the style in which he did it, the enthusiasm he had. Like when a horse coming back from a setback like he had, you like to see him come at it, enjoying the game again. He absolutely did every bit of that and more. And the comments from the Pauling camp and the lead up to this, they've been beyond bullish, I thought. I'd love to hear how much they think he's going to improve from it. I think it was even a mention of, that he might have been raspy even crossed the line, that he was so rusty last time. So, I mean, if there is that feeling that he's there to improve, he has the Kempton form from last season. I felt if he had turned up last year at Cheltenham, he would have won the Brown Advisory. I just feel he could still be, even though he is a quality horse and we all know about him, he could be a little bit underestimated. I just feel Gaelic Warrior and Fact to File, huge efforts to put up. We know that Willie Mullins' horse, we've seen it even for the last few weeks since. They haven't all been at concert pitch by any means. And I'm just a little bit conscious that the price is playing the two of those, that they have had a big effort into their systems very early. And I think there's actually some really good figures out there. I give credit to Paul Keeley in the Racing Post, who did a kind of an analysis I would like to have done myself on horses who have, ran to that kind of 170 plus figure in November and how they back it up in December. The figures didn't make for too much good reading. It is tough work to go and do it. So I'd be very, very interested in the Jukebox Man with a view that there is a natural curve of improvement to come, whereas just the other two, they could have softened each other up slightly. Two quality horses, but the prices you just have to get picky, don't you?
You do indeed, Dan. They've got plenty of good English challenge in this, Django Bay and the Jukebox Man. I suppose my little caveat with the Jukebox Man is a little bit that Ben Pauling is the boy who cries wolf. We were told handstands would win the Betfair Chase. He couldn't be in better form, and now it's kind of the same with the Jukebox Man going into Kempton. To me, it looked like Django Bay had a more solid profile going into the race.
Yeah, Ben Pauling, one of many trainers over here who isn't exactly afraid to say what he thinks he has on his hands, and he's always been very boyish about the Jukebox Man, and this week in particular seemingly thinks he's the best he's ever had him, has an outstanding chance. But I'd say on the bare form, he has to definitely step up. He's very much, I'd say, a bit of a stylish horse rather than a substance horse at this moment, whereas, see, Django Bay was a good novice chaser last year. Obviously, he's winning the Arkle being somewhat maybe fortuitous the way that race panned out, but his run behind Impere Pass was very promising. But his run at Ascot, he took his form to a whole new level. And even with that considered, you'd probably still have to say he has to improve again. Andrew, as well, I've been a long-term supporter of Jello for a long time now, probably about a year. And I think if we to run him in maybe the last 3 renewals or so, he would have an outstanding chance. It just so happens that he seems to have turned up in probably the best renewal for a long time. So we have some fair representation. I think Django Bay is clearly the outstanding one. But now we're going to get Fact to File and Gaelic Warrior seemingly both running. I would have said the 7-2 about Django Bay, considering he still has to step up to their level. I thought that was maybe a little bit on the skinny side.
Don, I suppose looking at this race, it's as the lads have mentioned, there's so many different ways you can go about picking it apart. How would you look to try and get into the race?
It's a hell of a race, Andrew, as the lads were saying. It's brilliant that Fact to File is running or set to run now, because you were kind of thinking after the John Durkin chase that it's the race for him. Like the King George, it's the ideal race for him. If Gaelic Warrior is going there, where's he going to go? So it's great that he's on track for the race now. That's obviously the right race for Gaelic Warrior as well. It's been in his agenda for a while. So it's going to be brilliant to see the two of them taking each other on again. The Jukebox Man, as Mark was saying, like he's it's hard to quantify him. Like his when he won the Cotter Star last year, his time was 8.77 seconds slower than Banbridge was, but they went at a really slow pace in the Cotter Star last year. Like his last 4 furlongs were quicker than any other horse at Kempton for the 2 days last year, according to Race IQ. So, it's and of course he was impressive in his return this season. So it's just hard to know. He does have to take a significant jump up to get up to the level at which Gaelic Warrior and Factifile are. So it's just, and he obviously handles the track. So it's fascinating to see how he's going to go. I agree with Dan on Django Bay. He's a horse when he won the Arkle last year. I was kind of thinking Cheltenham Gold Cup for him, and now he's a 7-2 shot for the King George. Again, it's going to be really interesting to see how he goes. I think maybe back at Cheltenham he might be seen in an even better light. So he's interesting, obviously. And Jello, Dan mentioned as well, it's hard to fault Jello. He's going to have to step up again, I think, as well. I think Banbridge is the underrated horse in the race. He won it last year. He put up a hell of a performance last year. All his times, all his sections were really impressive. And it wasn't that Ile-Francais weakened. He had to go and get him. He was fastest through the last 4 furlongs. Ile-Francais was second fastest, so he had to go and stay on and go and get him. And he had a different run into the race last season. He was well beaten the Fortria. Then he ran a hell of a race in the Hilly Way last season when he unseated at the last, and he was challenging an Ergamine. This year, he missed the Fortria. His seasonal return was in the Hilly Way. I thought he ran okay. You know, you probably wouldn't have wanted him to perform any worse than he did, but I thought he ran okay up until the second last. He just weakened from there. On ground that was too soft for him, over a trip that was too sharp for him. So back at Kempton, and we know that the King George is a race in which horses who run well one year, they are apt to come back and run well again the following year. It's that type of track, it's that type of race that if you've proven in the race, then it's a big asset to take back to the race the following season. And Sean Bowen confirmed as his rider. Obviously, that's a big asset to have around Kempton. So he's going to have to step forward from his first run to his second this year, but he did that last year from the Fortria to the Hilly Way, and there's a good chance he'll be able to do it again this year. Look, it's a better race this year. Obviously, it's a deeper race. There's more solidity to the race this year. It's a hell of a contest, but I just think Banbridge is just a little bit underrated and therefore overpriced.
If you are a fan of Django Bay for the King George, you can get a price boost with our sponsors, BOYLE Sports. You can get 7-2 about Django Bay from 3-1 up until Sunday at 6 p.m. Max stakes do apply. Terms and conditions apply, but you can look at that all down in the link below. We also have a price boost for the Welsh National, where you can get 9-1 about Haiti Calour, last year's National Hunt Chase winner, Irish Grand National winner, and now potentially lining up in his native Welsh National for trainer Rebecca Curtis. Max stakes do apply, terms and conditions apply, but you can look at that all down in the link below. We'll go to Dan Overall first, because last year he managed to pluck out of the abyss Val Dancer, who came from literal fog. I don't think we saw any bit of the race apart from him crossing the line with around 50 yards to go.
Yeah, but I've watched that race despite only being able to see 45 seconds of it. I would say at least 25 times since. It was one of my finest achievements being able to pick him out of this time last year. Obviously, he went off, I think, 8-1 in the end, having been quite well backed, and 50-1 on this show. Somewhat surprised he hasn't returned for it. Obviously, they're giving him a bit of a different campaign, but Jubilee Express does reoppose, who has undoubtedly had a better preparation going into it this time around. Obviously, went there fresh, and I think arguably that was the difference on the day with Val Dancer having the run under his belt. But I also do think this is a deeper race than last year. At the top of the betting last year, you had a fair few exposed types, but with the likes of, obviously, Jubilee Express, who could be well in, Mr. Vango, Haiti Calours, who you've mentioned, Gitmaker, who seemingly had this race as a target for 2 years. I think it's got a bit of a stronger look to it. And maybe just one thing to consider with some of those towards the head of the betting is that the top weight currently is Intense Raffles, 155. Not sure if he runs, but then you have Haiti Calours off 154 and Mr. Vango off 152. With Jubilee Express, that could mean it somewhat invalidates the fact he's going to be a couple of pounds well in, because the minimum weight you can carry is 10 stone 2, and he's currently 9 stone 13. So just something to consider if you're a fan of his. The one who isn't as fancy a price as Val Dancer was last year, I just think has the most solid look to him, is O'Connell. who, despite being 9, is clearly on a steep upward curve, and I think somewhat symptomatic of the Joel Parkinson and Sue Smith combination this season. Obviously, won a Lincolnshire National. He's been second in an Ida, and it was another career best when an easy winner at Sandown when last seen over 3.5 miles. Crucially as well, he seems quite ground versatile. Now, Chepstow, I think, is due around sort of 20 mils over the next few days. So it's going to turn testing, but after that, it's a bit of a dry period so far. So it's going to be a test, but not the real grueling test perhaps it might often perceive to be. He'll be £1 well in for that win at Sandown as well. And I think it's a deep renewal of the race, but I just like the way O'Connell's been progressing this season.
Yeah, interesting call from Dan. That Mark, obviously the Welsh National race that I think I said it on this show last year. No matter what happens in the race, I will never come close to backing the winner of it. It just seems as a tale as old as time. I can throw as many darts at the race as possible. It always seems to go south. But what have you fancied? I suppose the two, possibly pride aside for myself, were the two Sam Thomas horses. They intrigued me. Obviously, Jubilee Express well found in the market, though.
Bad news for you and probably bad news for me is that they're the two for me as well, the two Thomas horses. So we're snookered here, aren't we? And I think 8 of the last 10 winners have been single figure price as well. It shouldn't be this difficult a race for us, Andrew, but I think I'm along the same lines as you previously as well. It is a bit of it's a funny one down the years, but Jubilee Express, I think it's coming together for him quite nicely. Like last year's run, it was his first since March. He hadn't been seen at all. You just get the impression prep-wise, it's been so much smoother now. You know, you had his blow away the cobwebs run earlier in November, came back then and won the trial. That trial has produced 3 of the last 4 winners of the Welsh National. You know, able to go so close last year. He's got his little penalty. I think he's at £4 for having won a chase after the November 30th. So he'll have 4 more than last year, but you get the impression that just the way Sam Thomas trains, the way this race obviously have huge significance to him, and the way the horse has now come on again, he kind of behind the bridle type, it should be a benefit to have had those couple of runs compared to last year. So I typically, as Eddie, would like to try and find value in the race. I think this time around, I'm looking at it going, right, learn from something here, Mark. You know, 8 of the last 10 single figure prices, maybe you have to, you know, keep a little bit more on the beaten track. But I think the other horse as well, Sean Manucci, pedigree wise, obviously it's a little bit of an unknown stamina, but pedigree has a chance. He's a half to Katati Dory, and just you get the impression he is the class act of the two of them, and he's a bit bigger of a price. And again, this is the date you surely would have circled in the calendar as well for both horses. And you know, there wasn't fireworks in his comeback, but kind of relative to what you'd expect, I thought it was a reasonable enough effort. I was happy enough to, you know, if there was a big difference in price on the day between the two, maybe I'd start to think differently. But at this point, I think, unfortunately for the two of us, I think Sam has a fairly good chance of going close in this race again.
Yeah, I think so. I was very lucky to get to Sam Thomas's for Racing TV earlier this season, and he'd earmarked the Welsh National with Show Manucci from right at the start of the season, which I thought was so intriguing for a horse obviously very light on chasing experience, and got a relatively nondescript ride at Haydock last time out. So he's certainly on my radar. Don, who did you fancy for the race?
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. He's only had 2 runs over fences, which is kind of really little experience for a Welsh National, but he did win a maiden hurdle at Chepstow, and we know that Chepstow form is massive going back to a Welsh National. And yeah, of course, Jubilee Express gets a £4 penalty, brings him up to 130, and Dylan he raced 126 last year. Dylan Johnson, he had a £3 claim last year. He's just lost that, so he won't have that this year, but he's got a year's extra experience on board, so one allows for the other, so you can see that for sure. It is like you're looking at Mr. Vango and Haiti Calor, the class horses in the race, but 11 of the last 14 winners carried 10-10 or less, and 5 of the last 6 carried 10-6 or less. So it is a race in which you start at the bottom of the handicap and work your way up. And I think Collector's Item has been a little bit underrated. Like, he finished second behind Jubilee Express in the Welsh National Trial last time. Jubilee Express had a run. Collector's Item hadn't had a run. It was a seasonal debut. The handicapper gave him £3 for it up to 138, but it's an early closing race, so he's £3 well in. He's £4 better off, obviously, with Jubilee Express from that run. And I think the move to the longer trip will suit him better. Like, he ran in the London National last year. He finished second behind Mr. Vango in the London National at Sandown last year. He's now £12 better off with Mr. Vango. And I thought it was interesting that John A.J. O'Neill ran him in the Welsh National Trial this year instead of in the London National. They were on the same weekend. So you'd think that this has been a plan for him. He stays well. When he beat Katati Dory in the, I think it's called the Somerset National at Wincanton in January last year, and that was the race before Catate Dory went on and spread eagled his whole field in the Ladbrokes Trophy at Kempton off at, I think, a £3 higher mark. And collector's item, he's got Cheps to form as well. He did run in the Welsh National trial last time. He won a novices hurdle there as well. So I just think, I think the disparity between his odds and Jubilee Express's odds is greater than it should be. And I think he could be the value of the race.
Our sponsors, BOYLE Sports, are also giving out sign-up offers for our British-based customers. If you bet £10, you're entitled to £40 worth of free bets. Bet 10 to get 40. Terms and conditions apply. You can look down in the description down below to avail of a brilliant sign-up offer. One of our regulars on the programme is Gavin Lynch. Gavin couldn't join us here in our little 4-box of wonder, but he was able to give us a few selections for the Christmas period over in Ireland from Leopardstown and from Limerick.
How are you, lads? Happy Christmas, and happy Christmas to everybody who's watching. I hope you have a great time over the festive period. It's going to be brilliant racing as always. I'm just going to touch upon 1 or 2 selections for each day at Leopardstown and Limerick. There's 4 days of each. I'm going to start off with the first race in Leopardstown, a maiden hurdle over 2 miles. As always, the 12:05. I'm personally going to go for Lazare de Star. Finished second to St. Bacco and Navan. I thought that was a really good run. The first 2 finished clear. Willie will have plenty of horses in the first. His horses are just not bombing at the minute, but I'm sure that'll change over the Christmas. The Reverend is in it, for example, at the moment in the 5-day decks, was rated 100 on the flat, but I just think Lazare de Star is a decent animal. In the next one, I'm going to go against Dr. Dumanil if he goes here over 2 miles. I think Gordon has some very, very good quality opposition in the race. He's got Jalan Dudery, the Flying King, and most interesting of all is El Keras, 5th in the champion bumper, and then ran well when hanging like a gate in Punchestown for David Maxwell. So with Jack Kennedy on board, I think if El Keras goes here, it'll be a compliment that Gordon has put him in ahead of Jalan Dudery and the Flying King. So I think El Keras could take a bit of beating. Moving on to Limerick on the 26th. There's 2 mares races. There's mares handicap hurdle, and I like each way in this horse belonging to Dennis Hogan, and that's Cousin Kate. Ran a cracker behind Willie's mare in Gorham Park, and then the last day Dennis rode it himself. I don't think Dennis has ridden that many horses over the last year, so got chained in a 3-way photo. I think if he goes back to a more full-time jockey, I think that could pay dividends, and I think she has an each way chance off 105 in the 208 on the 26th in Limerick. And in the bumper, there's a horse called Moon Veron, trained by Martin Hassett, a 4-year-old filly or mare. Ran a cracker in Fairyhouse the day of the Royal Bond. Just got chinned late on. I think if she goes here, even though it'll be a tough race, I think she would take a bit of whacking. On to the 27th in Leopardstown. I think Madgeborough will take a bit of beating in the Paddy Rewards chase over 2 miles 1. It's the 112. Back on left-handed, it's had a run, so it should be fully fit. Jumping obviously is a bit of an issue. But definitely going left-handed will suit a lot better. I've backed it to win the champion chase, and I think if it goes and wins here, we're back. In the future champions novice hurdle, whatever Paul Townend rides would be favourite. Le Divan Fawn, just Paul was very complimentary afterwards, and the fact that he was so bullish makes me think that perhaps he'll ride that horse. Le Divan Fawn is available at the moment around 3-1, and that could be value, especially if Paul chooses that horse. Moving on to Limerick on the 27th. There's a handicap hurdle at 3:11. A horse called Le Jean-Lure de Palma, trained by Eric McNamara of 102. It has a few entries, including the 3:41 on the 27th. Wherever that runs, it got a £9 penalty for winning in Limerick the last day on heavy ground, can handle conditions. Eric loves to have a couple of winners at Limerick at Christmas, so that must have an each way squeak. Moving on to Leopardstown on the 28th. The Savills, I'm going to go for, I know the way you're thinking, I've backed it to win the Gold Cup. I think he's a super horse. I think he's underrated. He's only 7. I just have a sneaking suspicion. I don't know whether I've heard nothing, but I just wonder would Galop and Deschamps maybe go to Tremor on New Year's Day, because he's 9 turning 10. He's done a lot for the stable. He's won 2 Gold Cups. It'll be a nicer introduction for him, and I just wonder is there a small chance that Gaelic Warrior might go here instead of the King George. As I said, I've heard nothing, but it's just a guess. But even so, I think I know the way you're thinking. Stepping back up to 3 miles. He had a pipe opener in the John Durkin as usual, same as last year. On to Limerick on the 28th. The biggest race of the day is the Fáhí Novice Chase. Very hard to see Final Demand getting beat. He was flawless in Navan. The horse I'm going to go for that day is Now What Do You Think in the Tim Duggan Memorial Handicap Chase. Ran in Wexford, made the running, but finished third in a race that's working out very well. And the last day in Cork, it changed tactics, held up, jumped absolutely brilliantly. Jumping was fantastic. But I think now, what do you think would have a chance in that of 130? Moving on to Leopardstown on the 29th, there's a handicap chase over 3 mile and 100 yards. Gringo Dubrell would have a squeak here. 113 over fences. Won recently in Navan, is now up to 131, so £18 lower over fences. And if it can lift the legs at all, it should run a massive race. And the last one I want to mention is on the 29th in Limerick. There's a novices handicap chase. Again, Eric McNamara, the Limerick man. He's dynamite, very impressive in Galway, jumped brilliantly, won since over hurdles, but goes back over fences of 104 over 2 mile 6. It's in the 12:32 on the 29th. Have a brilliant Christmas, Happy New Year, and take care. Thanks, goodbye.
Great to hear from Gavin Lynch, and best of luck for all his selections, and we will obviously see him back on the wire later this season. We move over to the good stuff at Leopardstown, and the big handicap chase on the 27th of December is the Paddy Power Chase. And Dan, I come back to you again, because not only did you find Val Dancer last year, even though Irish handicap's probably not top of your bill, you still plucked Percival Le Gallois out of the air as well.
It was a memorable 20 minutes or so, yeah, and it's one I'll probably never replicate again, and I'm due a very bad Christmas, but I am holding on to every piece of wood possible to hope that it's not going to happen this year. And I'm very keen to follow Will the Wise whenever he goes to a 3 mile handicap chase again, but they're sort of making noises that he might go to Cheltenham on New Year's Day, drop back in trip, and the Cromwell team well represented anyway. Ballysax Hangton back to normal. And that kind of leads me on to Mossy Fen Park, who I came down on, who I thought for a horse of his profile would probably be a bit shorter in the betting. Obviously, he's always been held in pretty high regard, and you look at his chase form generally, it just reads very well. Obviously, behind the likes of Firefox and Dancing City, obviously 2 pretty high-class novice chasers last season, and then beat Oscar's brother on his reappearance at Listowel, where obviously we know Oscar's brother has gone on to frank that form since. He was slightly disappointing in the Grade 3 at Cork when last seen, but that was a drop back in trip on a relatively sharp track on decent ground, and I think it's always been the impression that he is a proper 3 miler. His mark 137 looks very fair to me based on the form he's achieved thus far, and if you're probably going to be concerned about something, it's that the yard has been out of form for a little while seemingly, but I imagine there would be all eyes towards the Christmas period with a lot of their runners, and you'd expect that to turn around at some stage. So for a very lightly raced chaser like him, I thought the sort of current price around 20 to 1, 16 to 1 looked a tad on the big side, and I could see him getting quite well supported.
Yeah, interesting cases made, Dan. Mark, Paddy Power, one of the real great kind of betting handicaps of the year. Doesn't get any easier year on year, though. Where did you come down this time round?
I'd probably prefer to Welsh National. Maybe that's the patriotism coming out in me. But yeah, Henry de Bromheads were actually down there last week. Both myself and Don, I was covering for the Irish field, and it was interesting to hear Henry talk about a couple for the Paddy Power. He did give a good mention to Dan's selection, but he also gave a mention to the one that I was hoping he would give a decent nod to, and that was Waterford Whispers. Like, this horse has been a bit of heartbreak hotel now, in fairness, over fences. He does test you down the last little while. But
Mark, what are you doing going?
Am I doing it again?
Like, you can't be going down that road again, can we?
But he's only won 30 over fences. I have to, Andrew. I have to give him one last belt of it. Look, if there's a race for a JP McManus handicap chase, like, this is the one. He's won 5 of the last 10 JP, second a couple of times in that as well, with Manila Times from this stable. And obviously, remember Fitzhenry against the Bowl Roaring Bull that day with Jerry. But I really do think, you know, if things could come together at 3 miles for him, it's his first time to try the trip over fences, and I'd love to see a little bit of positivity tactics wise. Like, when he ran so well in the Martin Pipe, he led them going out in the final circuit over 2.5, just got wore down by a stout stare. I'd love to see him get him up, you know, in the first half of the field, give him a chance. Think jumping wise at that trip, it'll give him a chance to settle and get into a rhythm. You know, as well as that, I think Henry mentions about going left-handed. That could possibly be a help to him as well. Listen, it was so bad at Punchestown last time, and, you know, if you got involved at 11-8, 100%, I understand if you don't fancy going again. But I just think he is a horse that's better than a mark of 130. As it stands at the minute, you're looking at 10 stone 6. I think that's just a quality horse at the right end of the weights for the right connections. You've got to do a little bit of forgiving, but if there is a day that you could think they might be planning towards, something like this could make sense. And he could have won at Leopardstown a couple of Christmases ago as well. He was beaten by an absolute whirly of a Michael O'Sullivan ride on Champion Admiral. He should have won that day, really. Of course, is going to suit him down to the ground. Listen, maybe I'm taking my life in my hands, lads, but I think Water Whispers 130. I'm going to give him one last go.
Well, you're a braver man than me, Mark, I must confess. Don, obviously a really good little handicap this, or big handicap, should I say. We've all been caught top of the market for Eric McNamara, who's obviously had great success in this race before, and he ran a big race down in Limerick in the Munster National, coming up short, kind of behind a stablemate, but he's been given £5 for that, which is probably on the harsh side.
Yeah, I can see why. I can see him improving again. Like just on Waterford Whispers, like he could be a seriously well handicapped horse. As Mark said, he's off 130 when he ran off 133 in the Martin Pipe Hurdle a couple of seasons ago, and you never thought he'd be running in the Paddy Power Chase off 130 off a lower mark than his hurdles mark that day. So that wouldn't be surprising. D Capo's a horse I like. He's going to have a lot of weight, though. I thought he did well to win at Punchestown the last day. He was weak in the market and he was back in the field off a sedate pace. I thought he stayed on well to win well. Midnight Hour Fred, another horse who, if the ground just continues to dry out, then he could come into it for John Flavin, good trainer John Flavin. But no, like we've all been caught as the one that I actually like, Andrew. He's got a very similar profile to the profile that Real Steel had before he came and won this race 3 years ago. I look at that race again there last night. And Real Steel, at no point could you have, I mean, it was a bit foggy that day as well, but at no point could you have called him the most likely winner, but he stayed on really well. And Eric McNamara, very, very good trainer. He's having a super season as well. And we've all been caught, was a good horse for Nigel Twiston-Davies and for Christian Williams. Back in the early part of his career, they were talking about Gold Cup. Like Nigel Twiston-Davies did mention Imperial Commander, that type of route that they go with, and that obviously didn't come to pass. But he's still young. He had a decent season last year. He finished fourth in the Kimure. He finished fourth in the good 3 mile Premier Handicap Chase at Aintree as well. And this season, you mentioned, Andrew, that run in the Munster National, that was a big run. He did look like he might come and win it. In the end, he was beaten by his stable companion, French Dynamite. Big race for Eric McNamara, had the 1-2 in the race. But I think on better ground, he'll be better. I think as well going left-handed might be a positive for him. His best form in Britain was at Cheltenham and Doncaster, so maybe going back left-handed will be a positive for him. But you said he got a £5 hike, which is, probably a wee bit more than you would have thought for finishing second, but it was a competitive handicap and it brings him up to a mark of 137. He was rated, his peak rating was 136 before this, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. He should have a nice racing weight. And I'm sure this has been the plan for him for a little while as well. Munster National onto the Paddy Power Chase. So, yeah, look, he's high in the market, but he's a 12-1 shot or thereabouts, and I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, certainly can see the case for we've all been caught there for Eric McNamara, who's becoming an absolute jab hand with these types of horses, kind of refreshing them and rejuvenating them. One of the other great offers from our sponsors, Boyle Sports, is best odds guaranteed, applying to all singles and multiples. You can get bog on all singles and multiples at Boyle Sports. But we go from the Paddy Power Handicap Chase to the big grade one of the entire week, the Savills Chase, where we will hopefully see the return of Galopin Des Champs, last year's Gold Cup winner. I know the way you're thinking. Faster Slows in there. Plenty of good horses. Champ Kiley, the likes, down the market. Mark, this is a real burn-up if all these come to it. I suppose we've gotten used to Galopin Des Champs having his blowout in the John Durkan before coming on here. Would you subscribe to the fact that he's a horse that now needs the run, or would you subscribe to the fact that just Leopardstown at 3 miles is exactly what he wants?
I think it can be both, Andrew. Unfortunately, if it was as simple as been one, I'd be very happy. But I think the way they're training him this year, you just get the impression, hearing comments from that camp, I think even though he had a setback that meant he missed the John Durkan, maybe having him peaking towards Cheltenham in March rather than at every dogfight along the way, I think that's going to be a little bit of the story for him. But I just look at the opposition here and I wonder how forward each of them are as well. And I wonder whether timing, we're obviously starting later in the year as well with Galopin Des Champs. That's going to be, it's not like it's his first start of the season, early November, mid-November time. So there's a few different factors to weigh up. But the Leopardstown one is huge for this horse. 4 times in his career, he's broken RPR of 180. 2 of them have come in a Savills Chase here. And I think even you look at his Leopardstown form in general, I think the first day he got beat here, Mikey Fogarty in a grade 1 novice hurdle 2 miles. Since then, 7 starts, 7 wins. You do see the best of Galopin Des Champs around here. And price-wise, the question you've been asked is, okay, how much do you subscribe to Readiness? How much value do you place in it? But he's about 2-1, and 2-1 as well is another way you're thinking, who's beaten 53 lengths last time. So it's obviously there's improvement to come from both of them, but it's the levels of where we're at, what base we're starting from. And just given Galopin's history around here, and it is price related, if I was been asked to take a considerably shorter price, I would think differently. But it's kind of that 2-to-1 territory. I think that is reasonably fair. And I thought the comments from Martin Brazel that I read on IrishRacing.com this week were interesting too, relating to him. He said he's probably not ready to have a real hard race yet. He's fitting well, but he's a horse that's had a few soundness issues. We thought for him, longevity-wise, go to Leopardstown, see how we get on, Leopardstown the following month, and have another go at the Gold Cup. So for me, they're all teetering towards March. And if one of them can show time and time again that they are able to deliver the goods at Leopardstown, it is Galopin. And you're not getting a stupid price short-wise either. So I can't wait to see it. I won't be heartbroken for either of the three if they get beat, because their season will go on to big things again. But I just think he is the king around here. Can't wait to see him again.
Don, I suppose if you kind of listen into the camp of Willie Mullins, I've felt, certainly dealing a little bit with Ruby Walsh in recent days with Road to Cheltenham, that there's almost a silent feeling that he is really coming back to himself. And, as Mark says, when you have that record at the track, it is so hard to get away from. And I suppose hard to get away from just the idea last year that, I know the way you're thinking, took an awful long time to kind of get to concert pitch, which was in March.
Yeah, look, I'm in Mark's camp as well. I'm dying to see Galopin Des Champs again. And, you kind of, obviously it would be ideal if he had run in the John Durkan Chase and finished first or third there, which he always does, and then come on here. But I think, it's as much about the time of year with Willie Mullins as it is about having had a run. Like, we're coming up to Christmas now, and you can see that this is when he kind of clicks into gear and starts rolling. And Galopin Des Champs, yeah, look, Mark covered it all. Like, his record at Leopardstown is phenomenal. 7 runs and chases there, 7 wins. He's won 3 Irish Gold Cups, 2 Savills Chases, going for his 3rd. And like the reception that he got last year was in both races last season, in the Savills Chase and in the Irish Gold Cup. Brilliant. Like, the Paul Town and coming back in, and it really, I don't know, National Hunt Racing Christmas time, that's what it's all about. It really does. It kind of makes you just happy to be there and happy to be there to see him, because it's brilliant. It's kind of spine tingling stuff. But look, if we were to go and do it again on the seasonal return, that'd be brilliant. I know the way you're thinking. Yeah, like, he's kind of rolling into the season. He's run 3 times at Leopardstown. He's been beaten on all 3 occasions. You can see him obviously coming forward from his John Durkan Chase run, but he's obviously going to have to come forward quite a bit. Fast or slow, he did have the King George as the option. Good that he's coming here instead. And of course, he's going to have to come forward from his seasonal return as well in the John Durkan Chase. Again, he's probably a better horse at Punchestown than he is at Leopardstown. So again, he's going to have to come forward. But brilliant that he's back, having missed most of last season. It's good it's great that he's here, and that he will come forward from his John Durkan Chase, almost certainly run. So you can expect him to put in a big performance again. But yeah, of all of them, Champ Kiley he's got a little bit to find if he's going to be involved. But I think he's still unexposed over 3 miles, so he's worth keeping in the back of your mind. But of the big 3. Yeah, I agree with Mark. I think Galopin Des Champs at a similar price. I know the way you're thinking. I think he's the one. I think they'll probably come from as well, Andrew. I think he'll probably go off favourite on the day. So 2-to-1 or thereabouts about him now. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and I completely echo those sentiments. He's just going to be the horse that will end up getting that kind of spree of money on the day. I suppose, Dan, just playing kind of devil's advocate to that, you do run the risk with Galopin Des Champs, another year older. At some stage, he isn't going to be quite the same horse that he was a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, that day will come, invariably. But again, echoing a lot of what the lads have said, it wouldn't be a punting race for me. I think it's one of those informative grade ones rather than a betting one, because you say there are so many sort of questions I guess you can ask about all of them. Obviously, Galopin fitness-wise, how ready is he? I still want to see it again from, I know the way you're thinking before. I really believe he's a top out-and-out grade 1 horse. Mark's already mentioned those comments from Martin Brazel about fast or slow, who otherwise, if he was going to be more forward, it might be the perfect opportunity for him to take. And beyond that, you're sort of looking down the list at horses who we know, if the other 3 are on their top level, aren't really able to get to them. It's a race I'll be fascinated to watch, and I'll be Team Galopin Des Champs in terms of, I hope he's back to his best, and I hope he gets another Gold Cup under the belt, and I hope he wins at the DRF as well. But we'll learn a little bit more about where everyone else is at, and it might be just the case that it sets us up perfectly for the Dublin Racing Festival.
It will be fascinating. There are plenty of grade ones elsewhere. There's a good grade one down in Limerick where we'll hopefully see Final Demand. There's plenty more at Leopardstown over the Christmas period. But we're going to give the lads their opportunity to give their best bets for the Christmas period. We've slightly hamstrung Dan on this occasion because usually on this show he would be plotting something at Sedgefield, Fontwell, Huntington, all the lesser meetings, potentially in inverted commas, on St. Stephen's Day. But there's no entries for them, Dan. So unless you've got the inside line, I'm not sure how you're going to manage that. But take it away for who you fancy this Christmas.
There are some depths even I won't stoop to, and that's one of them. But you can best believe when those entries come out, I will be there going through them with a fine-tooth comb and finding a horse rated 79, I think, who has at least £7 in hand. But in terms of the better action on your side of the Irish Sea, I'm keen to follow Narciso Has in the Grade 2 Juvenile Hurdle. And I think you only have to see how a lot of Willie's younger horses have been needing the run first time out. And I think, therefore, you can mark up his second to Manch 2 significantly. He will be £1 worse off due to the race conditions, but he came with a massive reputation beforehand. And I think it's notable that he's Willie's only runner in the race, or seemingly entry. I'm not sure if that's the case of his others are just a bit far behind. Something may well emerge, but it might be a bit of a pointer that he is sort of the leading candidate in that division currently. And obviously no prices yet for that race, but he's 16-1 for the Triumph Hurdle, and no surprise at all if he'll reverse that form with Manch 2, and he could well elevate himself right to the top of the Triumph Hurdle betting.
Yeah, very interesting for Dan this Christmas. Donn McClean, who do you fancy for the festive period?
There's so much brilliant racing, Andrew. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing Romeo Coolio again. Dying to see Majborough against Marine Nationale, if that comes to pass, in the big 2 mile 1 furlong chase at Leopardstown on 27th. And then you mentioned Final Demand and the Faugheen Chase taking on Oscar's brother and Jimmy DeSoy maybe as well. And the 3 mile hurdle, the Christmas hurdle, looks like Ballyburn and Teahoe are going to take each other on again. That's going to be fascinating, stepping up to 2 miles 7.5 furlongs from the 2.5 mile of the Hatton's Grace hurdle when there was nothing between them. I think the Yellow Clay might be a little bit underrated in that. Giving him another chance, he was obviously well beaten in the Smullen hurdle on his season return, but he just, as Gordon Elliott said afterwards, he was never really travelling in that race, and he showed a lot of guts to even get up for second place behind Lorna Fowler's horse, Colonel Mustard. So he was such a good novice last year over 2.5 miles. He should improve for stepping up to 3 miles, and it looks like Gordon's going to allow the two of them take their chances in the race. Teahoe and the Yellow Clay, he might be a little bit underrated in that. But I think best bet is collector's item each way in the Welsh National, as we discussed earlier on. I just think he's a bigger price than he should be.
Yes, that's a very interesting case. Don's made 4 collector's item. Mark, this is where we usually come to blows, because there will be.
Are you ready to cash over and not to 100 in Limerick, Andrew? This is what we've all.
I've looked forward to this for 12 months.
But we know the money's there to be made in those low grade handicap hurdles down in Limerick.
This is it. Look, I throw one in the mix from that lower grade bracket there. There's a horse called Kelly's Cosmos for Owen McCarthy. Had a really nice second start for him since joining. He's only a 4-year-old, but thought he ran really well at Galway. And the form of that race, it hasn't been hugely tested, but the runner-up came out and finished second to Let Us in that valuable handicap hurdle at Naas. So that gives a bit of a boost. It's got entries everywhere. It's in Down Royal the 26th, Limerick the 27th and the 29th. But I think Kelly's Cosmos for a very, very capable yard, and they set their mind to a specific target, if I can get my words correct. They are very, very effective. So I look forward to seeing him at Limerick as well. Probably one of the lower grade ones to throw into the mix. The Veterans Chase, the 27th. Crabat, I thought, had a really nice pipe opener over hurdles at Fairy House behind Fierce Handy last weekend. Loves a cut in the ground. Limerick form is very, very solid too. Trained by the McDonoughs, who love a winner at Christmas down here as well. I think off his mark, he's in a reasonable sort of territory, 1-1-1. It's not the deepest of races by any means. And this horse was third to Muscada in Tim Duggan a couple of years ago down here. Loves heavy ground. So I think Crabat could be interesting for all that he's not the most frequent of winners. And just a bit of a left field one to keep an eye on. It's not that I've got vibes on it yet from any particular source, but I just thought it was interesting to know that Donnacha O'Brien has his first national hunt runner potentially with Kilmeaden in a 3-year-old hurdle. He's entered at Limerick and he's entered at Leopardstown, the 3-year-old maiden hurdles. He was a smart flat horse, rated 91 on the flat, bumped into Saratoga, who was pretty useful last time at Listowel, Galway Festival winner. just thought that was interesting to see a yard like that paying attention to the national hunts side of things, and he could be pretty useful for hurdling potentially. So there's 3 for me, a little bit off the radar, I suppose. Maybe we go with the Cravat and the Veterans at Limerick on the 27th. Kelly's Cosmos, wherever he runs, it'll be interesting to see how he goes. And Kilmeaden, not necessarily a huge fancy, just interested to see how he shapes up. Donegal O'Brien with runner over jumps.
Well, Mark doesn't let us down yet again, plucking 3 from the abyss this Christmas time. And I'm going to do very similar, Mark. A couple of horses that I'd be keeping on side. One down in Limerick that has 3 entries across the course of the week is L'Angelo de Palma for Eric McNamara. He's been an impressive horse since joining this yard. Been raised £9 for winning the last day, but he's off 102. Still think he's the right side of the assessor down there. Then an interesting horse for yours truly, Paul Nolan, is Release the Beast. He's in the 2 mile 1 handicap chase.
Can't believe he's put on him up. Unbelievable.
Exactly. Can't
he saved Christmas last year.
But Release the Beast, 2 mile 1, a handicap chase on Stephen's Day at Leopardstown or the Tim Duggan down in Limerick. I'd actually prefer to see him in the Tim Duggan just because he was a very impressive winner at Limerick this time last year in the rated novice chase. He goes well fresh. They've given him plenty of time since a good second down in Wexford to Nuvotic. And then I was joking with Dan yesterday that I'd found the bet of the century, which was perhaps a little bit over the top, considering it comes in the beginner's chase up at Down Royal on St. Stephen's Day. But I do believe, despite a yard form of 0 from 54 this season, that Oliver McKiernan will have his first winner of the year with Supreme Jet, who's a very good second at Cork. The last day ahead of Kishbank doesn't look one of the great beginner's chases, so I will be taking him on side. McKiernan usually in the winners at Christmas time. But thanks to Dan, thanks to Don, and thanks to Mark, and thanks to Gavin Lynch, who joined us at the halfway stage of this episode. I really hope that you did enjoy it. I really hope that you have a very good Christmas with plenty of punting expertise and plenty of winners thrown in as well. If you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like, subscribe to the channel down below, and we'll see you again soon on the Wire.
BOYLE Sports.